Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest edition of Pro Soccer Talk. I'm your host, Joe Prince-Wright, over here in a jubilant England. Delighted to say that I'm joined by Nick Mendola in Buffalo, New York, and Andy Edwards in Kansas City. Gents, the Euros are wild. Round of 16's just finished up. We're heading into the quarterfinal stage. There have been some crazy games over the last few days for us to talk about, analyze, and break down today. But Nick Mendola, your main takeaway from where we're at the Euros right now, because it's been chaos, but it's been beautiful chaos.
It has been absolutely nuts. The games that you predict will go the way. Like, I had Belgium beating Portugal. I did not have Belgium being outshot 24-6 and beating Portugal. I thought Germany was going to beat England. I feel like I'm eating a ton of crow with, I want to find a way to take Gareth Southgate and make his name sound like more Calcio, because of how they've just took it to teams with frustrating efficiency.
Well, they are heading to Rome for the quarterfinals, so maybe that is just preparing for that. Andy, what were your big takeaways from the last 16 games and heading into the quarterfinals? What are you looking for?
So much. This tournament just delivered. We were excited coming into it. We didn't know exactly what it would be. I think we were a little bit, we were a little cautiously optimistic going into it that, well, the players have played a ton in a short period of time. A lot of them are going to be fatigued. There might be some injuries. We might not have all the stars there, and on and on and on. And then the tournament started. It just hasn't mattered. And certainly in the knockout rounds, the way that these last 4 days have gone, and especially Monday with the 5-3 in extra time and then 5-4 on penalties after 3-3 in regular time. And we've got goals after the 80th minute and after the 90th minute. It's crazy. And having to write recaps is one of, it's kind of the bane of our existence. But at the same time, it's just so exciting. And I can't imagine if I was doing anything else but watching these games, writing recaps, talking to you guys about them. It's just the absolute best.
Oh, we love a rewrite at Pro Soccer Tour, don't we, Andy? You were giving me banter because I was on Spain-Croatia, and that was wild. And then it came right back at you with the France-Switzerland game.
I spoke way too soon.
Yeah, that's the way it happens. But that's the way we like it as well. It keeps us on our toes. And my word, we have a lot to talk about this week in Pro Soccer Talk. So before we get started, gents, let's have a beer transatlantically. Cheers to you both. And I'm just going to say, after I said this,
we earned that, by the way.
We did earn that. And over here in England, a lot of people are drinking beer tonight because to set the scene, we're recording this just after England reached the quarterfinals by beating Germany. And I've literally just got back from Wembley reporting for NBCSports.com. And it was an amazing atmosphere, a brilliant occasion. And all day here and all week, every radio station, TV station have been playing It's Coming Home. Everyone's telling Gareth Southgate what to do. There's flags everywhere. There's a real party atmosphere. It feels like a home tournament, really. And England have played all 4 of their games at Wembley now. And everyone's getting a bit carried away. Apart from me, even today, the euphoria, I nearly got wrapped up in it. And I know Andy and Nick have been trying to get me wrapped up in it the whole time. But we'll come to that. So let's focus first on the first big topic on Pro Soccer Talk this week. And that's looking at the quarterfinal bracket. It's now fully confirmed. There's some great games coming up. And we'll touch on what happened across the last 16 as well, because so much happened, gents, in that incredible last few days we've witnessed. So to look at the bracket and how things are looking now going into the latter stage of the tournament, we have Belgium against Italy in one quarterfinal and Switzerland against Spain in the other. And the winner of those 2 games will face off in the semi-final at Wembley Stadium. And on the other side of the bracket, we now know that Ukraine will play England in Rome, and the winner of that game will play the winner of Czech Republic, Denmark, who play in Baku, and the winner will play in the semi-final at Wembley. So, Nick Mendola, what do you make of those 4 quarterfinal ties? And one side of the bracket looks a lot tougher than the other right now, doesn't it?
It does, which is why, Joe, since it's obviously coming home, I see you've made room over your left shoulder for the trophy. So I like that you're dusting and getting prepared for it. There's a great spot for it, and we're looking for that. Feel like I have to apologize to all the England fans who I have said, yeah, you'll find a way to blow it, and maybe they still will. But I'm really, really, really interested to see how much expectations have changed. I feel like if England was popped into somewhere in the bracket and it was France or it was Spain and a hard road to get there, not that these won't be hard, Gareth, relax, we know. I feel like a lot of people would have been like, you know what, good, let's win a knockout round game, had a good tournament last time, and just hope for the best. And now anything short of the final feels like a crazy mistake and slip up. And the guys doing it, Joe, I mean, Raheem Sterling's life has been absolutely insane. Like, if they're going to make a movie about Vardy, they ought to make one about Sterling, and some of the things that he's gone through. And Declan Rice and Calvin Phillips, coming from, sorry, West Ham fans and Leeds fans, smaller-ish sides in terms of how they get the microscope put on them, and just showing just how good they are. Remember last year, the first we heard of Phillips was when Leeds was getting promoted and Liverpool was, oh, we might go after this guy. So it's just been neat to follow all those subplots, that it hasn't been Harry Kane and Harry Maguire. It's been other guys.
It has been. Andy, I know you've been on the England bandwagon for many years, not just this summer. What do you think? Right, let's focus on Ukraine, England, and what England have been doing so far in this tournament. What has your big takeaway been on the Three Lions?
Yeah, as I said a few weeks ago, I do this every major tournament, and I don't really know why. I think I just look at all the pieces and the parts that are in the squad and available to whoever the manager is at the time, and say, well, that clearly should be one of the 3 or 4 best teams going into a tournament. Now, obviously, for many, many years, it's not worked out that way for England. I know they got to a World Cup semifinal last time around, and so that was big progress for them. I think they're building on that now. The interesting thing is, because it's the names that sell you on England, but for this team in this tournament, it's been anything but the big names and the the flair players that you come into the tournament thinking, okay, well, this, Harry Kane will just carry this team because of the season that he just had for Tottenham. He's done essentially nothing for this team through 4 games of the tournament. And the fact that they are where they are and in such a commanding spot on the good side of the bracket, if you will, it's a testament to Gareth Southgate, the idea, the plan, the team, the tactics, the squad, the togetherness, everything that he's fostered over the last couple of years, and through tough times during the pandemic as well. It's kind of coming home to roost at the moment. They've not been fun to watch. They've been hard to watch, honestly, at times. And now England they're the pragmatic team at a major tournament, and they're the team that you're looking at and saying, you can shake your head, but they are the pragmatic team who knows exactly how they want to go out there and play. They have a plan from the start. You can question Southgate for 60 minutes because it doesn't look great and they're not creating a ton of chances. But then you look at the bench and you have Jack Grealish to come on, and you have Marcus Rashford sitting there. You have Jadon Sancho sitting there. There's so much talent that can come into a game if they can kind of not micromanage it, but get it to a point late into the second half where things are even or they've got a slight advantage, and then they've got a huge advantage with what they can bring off of the bench. So it's been fun to watch Southgate kind of maneuver so far through this tournament, and the way that he's done it's not how we want to see it, but it's working.
I just had to laugh earlier when you said it hasn't been fun to watch England. For me, it never really is fun. It hasn't been over my entire lifetime, but just to paint the picture here, okay, so I've been at Wembley throughout all the group stage games for England and then the last 16 victory against Germany. And the optimism levels have been quite high considering what they achieved in Russia in the 2018 World Cup, getting to the semi-finals, getting close to a final. So there was a lot of pressure, and Southgate's under a lot more pressure, I think, this tournament than the last one, understandably so. And he has stuck to his guns in terms of not playing Jadon Sancho, not playing Jack Grealish from the start in most of the games. And you have to hand it to the guy. He's got his tactics spot on. Against Germany in the last 16 game, switching to a 3-4-3 formation, that was very brave. And I was in his press conference after the game, and he said, you basically live and die by those decisions. If it goes for you, that's great. But if it goes wrong, then everyone's going to point a finger at you. Why did you change the formation? Why didn't you pick Jack Grealish? And I'm surprised by how well England have managed the situation. Jordan Pickford has been excellent in goal, which is a big shock. Defensively, the only team at Euro 2020 not to concede a goal yet, which is a big reason why they can almost play within themselves and then rely on quality in the final third. But yeah, I'm still not getting there on the bandwagon that it's coming home. But being at Wembley Stadium around just over 40,000 fans, it honestly felt louder and a better atmosphere than when there's been 90,000 fans in the stadium. I mean, the fans against Germany are just so involved. They were so desperate for success. And traveling around England, and there's a lot of apathy towards the national team, rightly or wrongly, over the years. but now you feel like everyone's connected. Everyone's all in on this team. They like the team. They like the manager for the most part, even though some people would say he's too negative. And there is something special building. And you guys aren't going to get me to come round yet because you nearly did there. But the euphoria of being wrapped up, I got in my car this morning, drove to Wembley, put on some music, top 50 UK hits came up. It's Coming Home started playing, and I actually listened to the song for the first time all the way through, and it got me in the mood for the day. And yeah, there's something special here right now going on, and I hope England can see it through because, as we said, they have the Ukraine quarterfinal. No disrespect to the Ukraine, but England will be heavy favourites for that. And they have one of Czech Republic or Denmark in the semi-finals if they get through. And that's at Wembley in front of 60,000 fans. And in the final, if they get through, is at Wembley in front of 60,000 fans. So it's all lined up for England to waltz into the final. But we all know it's not going to be as easy as that, especially me. Trust me, I know they're going to find some way to mess it up. But Nick, we have to focus on the other quarterfinals as well. But any more in England before we move on to Spain, Switzerland, Belgium, Italy, and Denmark against the Czech Republic?
No, and yes, I will admit that I usually I root against the big kind of media storylines, right? So England always, it's a hard ask for me to get behind them. But today I literally realized as I was watching Sterling celebrate that maybe my hated Toronto Maple Leafs in hockey, if they won a cup, because maybe I would think some sort of relief for them. I've never thought I would feel that way. And with England, there is that. And imagine this, every nation left. I'm not trying to say that there is an English exceptionalism going on here, Joe, but every nation left is coming out of one of the worst years or most challenging years of their lives. And it's like, I love going to see Bruce Springsteen live, right? I love the same song. I want to hear it every time. But the next time I see him and he plays it, the euphoria, I know my eyes are going to well up with tears. And when they shoot to the crowd at these venues, you see it. You see it in the faces of all of these fans. And I was thinking of you today as an Englishman covering this game, how you must have been so conflicted because the emotion, again, biologically, guys, we're coming out of something absolutely horrendous that took a lot of lives. And I just think maybe that's why I celebrated the USA win over Mexico even more. Maybe that's why the next World Series win will mean more to my team or to your team. And I actually am so happy for you guys who get to experience this and those people in the stadium because we missed out on a lot.
It's true. It's true. And Southgate spoke exactly about that point, Nick, that they've given the fans that moment, the fans inside the stadium and all across the country, in pubs, celebrating with their friends again and being able to do that after, a long road to get to this point. So, yeah, that there's an added, bonus or motivation, I think, for all of the nations left now in Euro 2020 to do something special in this year of all years over the last, 18 months or so after what's happened. So, yeah, really well put there. And let's move on to the next game, Spain, Switzerland. I don't think any of us would have had this one really in the quarterfinals, right? Because Spain, what a game against Croatia. Probably the best game of the tournament so far. That's not a stretch to say. I think an 8-goal thriller in Copenhagen with Alvaro Morata on the score sheet. Spain 3-1 up, then coughing up 2 late goals to Croatia to 3-3, extra time, couple of great goals. Chaos throughout, a wild own goal. We were on a call, Andy, when that own goal happened, and you went absolutely berserk with that. So, Andy, I'm going to let you have this. Spain, Switzerland. I mean, there's a clear front runner there. I think we all agree Spain should win, but Switzerland, to knock off World Cup champs France, the way they didn't just defend. They had a lot of going forward themselves as well. So this is going to be a really intriguing game, isn't it?
Yeah, resilient would be the word I would use to describe that Switzerland performance against France. And, not to, pat myself on the back here at all, but you asked for dark horses before the tournament. I gave you Switzerland as one. We'll get to the other one here in a little bit. They might still be alive in the tournament. But they were very resilient the way that they fought back. They've been very good defensively. And we were treated to a little preview of what Switzerland would be at this tournament when the U.S. men's national team played them in a friendly leading up to that. And I came away, as kind of disappointed or frustrated with the U.S. as I was in that game. Just kind of in the back of my mind was, Switzerland looked pretty good. Let's keep an eye on them in this tournament. And you look at the group that they had and say, well, they should probably get out of that. And then you get into the knockout rounds. And as we just talked about with England, anytime you've got a team that's as solid defensively as they have been, and they put the numbers in midfield the way that Switzerland have done. And Granit Xhaka was absolutely, I mean, he could not have been any better in that game against France. And his, Arsenal probably made 20 million off of that performance alone when he leaves this summer. So it's going to be a very, very difficult out, I think. Switzerland will be for Spain, but they showed, I think, progressing through this tournament. I think they're probably the team that has improved the most from game 1 to game 4 at this point. They had the struggles putting chances away early. They're not really struggling to put chances away now. At this point, it's a little bit more open. It's a little bit more chaotic than the short possession we're used to with Spain, but it seems to work for them.
Absolutely. And Nick, any thoughts on Spain, Switzerland there before we move on to Belgium, Italy?
Andy literally hit my two thoughts. It made me feel better about the U.S. loss. And Xhaka, I mean, I think this is just the story with him. If you're going to build your team around your midfield around him, I think go for it, right? Have somebody who's going to be behind him if he takes his risks. Have forwards and wingers who can take his sprayed passes and allow that he's going to miss the net a few times with audacious shots. But Switzerland is very much built around him being their best player. And it's actually really fun to watch. I wanted to see France move on. I had enjoyed watching Pogba kind of unleashed in a similar way, maybe. There might be something to that as well. And Mbappe and Benzema as a terrific villain. So I'm a little stung that they're out, but that makes me think Switzerland's their only loss, I think, in the last year is to Italy in this tournament. So, and they've played Spain twice in Nations League and it's been close. So could be a good game.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for Spain as well, as Andy said, they're on fire now going forward, and that's worrying for every team they come up against in the latter stages of the tournament, because Pedri ran the show, such a young, talented player from Barcelona, brilliant to step into that, level and just dictate the tempo. And obviously Koke is there, got a lot of experience, as Palaqueta, and up top Morata. Yes, he gets a lot of stick, but he finished superbly. And for me, when I watch him, it's his hold-up play in the Spanish team. He brings Ferran Torres and Sarabia and all the other attacking players into play. He connects so well with them and creates space for them. He's so unselfish. So, yeah, Spain, I think, will edge this one. But, yeah, it's going to be a great game against Switzerland. Okay, Nick, Belgium, Italy. I know you've been on Belgium since the start, but Belgium, defensively were very good, beat Portugal, a little bit lucky, but they deserve that luck, I think, by being well organized, and that's not something necessarily we'd associate with Roberto Martinez as a coach. So what do you see for that game? Because people would probably say it's 50-50, right, between Belgium and Italy going into this one.
Yeah, do you know that game that shows up on your calendar, on your radar, and you're like, can they both win? Can they both win? I've rooted for Italy since before I even knew the U.S. had a team. So for me, there's an emotional tug, especially because they play, we've said it on this show the last couple of weeks, they play a complete game right now. It isn't boring. It's fun. It's physical. It's fast sometimes, and they can slow it down as well. There's a lot of the right buttons being pushed, but Belgium, you just want to celebrate that. You want to celebrate them the way that you celebrated Spain at the early part of the last decade, just because they have every piece you can want. They can roll out Tielemans and De Bruyne, although we have to see how fit he is, who we've talked about a lot, how good Tielemans is on this space as well. So listen, now that Belgium has exposed Cristiano Ronaldo as a fraud, whose nation can only win tournaments when he's injured, and fake coaching on the sidelines, I think we can all agree that Spain is doing well because they don't have any Real Madrid players. So I'm just kidding, guys. I can't wait for this game. I think I want Italy to win, but I will use Belgium making me right as my fallback if they win.
Andy, I mean, Italy haven't really played anyone yet, right? That's the only problem. When they did, Austria took them, to extra time and made it very, very tough for them. Yeah,
I would say playing Switzerland and beating them there in the group stage it's not nothing at this point, and they did it pretty comfortably, if I remember correctly as well. So I'll give them a little bit of that. I am curious to see. I don't think they haven't played anybody, tough thing is really about how good they are. I think it's about stylistically how they're going to try to play. Now that they're coming up against one of those big teams, does Roberto Mancini suddenly change it from what has worked through these first 4 games? That will be my big question going into this game, because you can look at that central midfield at Marco Verratti, Jorginho, and Nicolo Barella and say that's the best midfield 3 at this tournament. And I don't think anybody, based on what we've seen so far, would probably put up much of an argument against that. It's also pretty defensive in the way that it lines up. And so when you come up against a team that's got the attacking talent that Belgium does, and those nerves start to creep in just a little bit in the couple of days leading up to the game, we'll see if Mancini, the steely nerve is there to continue to play in that way and give the freedom to those front 3. I think the indicator will be, is it the same 2 wide attackers? Is it Berardi? Is it Insigne on the other side? If it's not, and he switches to kind of a 3-man back line and gets 5 in the midfield, we could be in for 1, a boring game, and 2, I think probably Italy going out of this tournament, because their power right now is to be aggressive and to put the other team on the back foot. They're one of the few teams that's really doing it and doing it well at Euro 2020.
That's true, and like the subs coming off have made a huge impact for Italy, so it's going to be interesting to see if they can continue to do that. And for Belgium, De Bruyne and Hazard are injury concerns, but even without those 2 superstars, they have enough in attack to dominate most teams, which is ridiculous when you think about the strength of their squad. So what a game that should be. And then Denmark against the Czech Republic. Denmark are just blowing teams away at this point. I mean, they hammered Wales, looked so good defensively, but then in attack, Poulsen, so many Dolberg, so many players, stepping up in different games to deliver throughout this tournament. And of course, we have to kind of think with Denmark, it's almost destiny, right? At this point, with what happened to Christian Eriksen, the extra motivation, the players, the fans have. Nick, Denmark, Czech Republic, do we give the Czech Republic a chance? Because they knocked off the Netherlands, and, Souček and others are really, Thomas Hollis was brilliant in that game as well, and Patrick Schick scoring goals. So they're not going to be any pushovers, but I don't know. This is another 50-50 on the flip of a coin between Denmark and the Czech Republic, right?
Yeah, I just think there's a dark horse quotient there that they are just holding very close to themselves that we saw. And we've mentioned before that West Ham and Slavia Prague and some of the seasons that those players had, they're used to this situation. That said, Denmark is without Christian Eriksen, and we're not even talking about the horrible thing that happened to him. He's an incredible player. And I think that levels the playing field quite a bit.
It really does. It really does. So over at Pro Soccer Talk and NBCSports.com, we'll keep you covered throughout the Euros. We're at the quarterfinal stage now. The 3 gents you can see on the screen will keep you updated with analysis, news, how to watch these games. It's been crazy so far. I feel like the last few weeks have just flown by, and now we're really getting into the business stage of this tournament. Cannot wait. And I'm not going to say it's coming home until it literally has arrived at the doorstep at Wembley and the trophy is in Harry Kane's hands. So you can work on that for the next few weeks, lads. But anyway, it's been fun. It's been a fun tournament so far. And now we're going to move on to talking about who the favourites are, because we've changed a lot on this. Nick has been on Belgium since day one. Andy was with England. I said Portugal and then flip-flopped to Belgium a little bit. So, Andy Edwards, are you changing your mind here from England, or you fully on the bandwagon for the 3 Lions to win this thing?
No, I'm not changing, my opinion on England. If anything, I think I feel stronger about it, and it's not even about the path that they have to the final. That wasn't the best Germany team that we've ever seen. It wasn't even anything close to the best Germany team that we've ever seen, but it was still a formidable squad. It was still a team. I thought Germany played quite well, actually, in terms of, who had more of the kind of meaningful possession, who looked a little bit more dangerous. The real difference in that game in the last 16 was England had, would you say, 2 chances, maybe 3 chances in that game? They put them both away. Germany had a couple chances. Thomas Muller pulled it. I mean, Thomas Muller, of all German players, just missed the mark completely one-on-one with the goalkeeper. So, that to me tells me that this England team knows exactly who they are, and the tactics that Southgate has gone with for this tournament, he's gotten it spot on. And I know the calls are for, well, get Jack Grealish into the lineup. Look how good he was for 30 minutes when he came on. Imagine if they had him from the start. One, he wouldn't be doing that. from the start. He wouldn't be that effective against defenders and opposing midfielders who haven't been running for 60 minutes while he sits on the very cushy seats there at Wembley. But the other thing is, you would lose all of the defensive solidity that you've got there in the midfield. Declan Rice, Calvin Phillips, I think we were all pretty much in complete agreement around the room here before the tournament. That should be the central midfield duo at the base behind whatever the front four is going to be. And those two, they've had some ropey moments, I guess, at times, but by and large, they have just been absolutely fantastic. They've been a rock there at the base of midfield, and they were the reason, I think, that England were able to get by for a couple games without Harry Maguire, and even as Maguire is still getting back up to fitness, still getting up to sharpness.
Yeah, those two have been great, and considering it's their first major tournament as well for both of those players, still fairly young, incredible. And I have to say, being at Wembley for the group stage games in the last 16 game against Germany, if Grealish isn't on the pitch, he is the first player that England's fans are chanting. The whole stadium is, chanting for Super Jack to come on. And I'm in agreement with you, Andy, because it's a different game today. If he starts, he doesn't have those maybe tired legs of the German defense he can run at and turn and twist pass. And he is the perfect sub to bring on in these situations in a tournament where, after 65, 70 minutes, if it's level or England are 1-0 up, he can finish teams off. He can create something just like he did for Harry Kane. And he was involved in Raheem Sterling's goal as well. So I think England thus far have got their tactics absolutely spot on when it comes to formations, team selections. And Germany weren't great. Croatia weren't great, but they're still quality opposition. They've beaten both of them, beaten the Czech Republic, who have got to the quarterfinals. So, England's stock has definitely risen throughout the tournament. Nick, Belgium, have they gone up in your estimations, or are they kind of where you thought they would be?
I think they're where I thought they would be. And what's maybe keeping me from saying they've gone up at all is simply knowing the task that's ahead of them. And that's why I get tempted to look at maybe even 3 of the 4 teams at the bottom, just because I don't think England's had a stinker yet. In every tournament, you have a team that you have a game where your nation doesn't play at its best. And honestly, after watching Ukraine, Sweden, I do have a thought in my head that this team can go punch anybody at any time, that they have those pieces that can just do it. Yarmolenko has terrific power and vision and all that. And we've seen with whether it's at Dortmund or West Ham or wherever that he can do these things. So I tend to think my opinion of England has risen to the role of almost co-favorites. I really do think they're going to come out of the bottom half, and Belgium-Italy is going to be a slugfest. I think Spain is the next game. Whoever they play there, that's a slugfest. So I think Andy and I we maybe traded some texts about this earlier. That's asking an awful lot out of a team to, let's say you're Belgium, to beat Italy, Spain, and England in a span of 9 days.
If they win it, they will have earned it. Absolutely.
Portugal before that as well. And the last thing, I mean, they've done it the hard way, and fair play to them. When it comes to Ukraine, I agree with you on that, because if you look at some of Yarmolenko, Malinovsky, Yaremchuk, I mean, they have some very talented players, and if they sit back defensively and deep and they're going to be tired after going to extra time against Sweden, they are capable of hitting teams on the counter or having that individual bit of quality where Yarmolenko just bends one in from 35 yards out. And we've seen that England against Scotland struggled to score and have struggled for goals generally in this tournament. So that's going to be an interesting battle. And I think England, yes, I think you're right. They still have one game where they will not play well in this tournament. Again, I'm talking them out of winning this. I'm looking at Belgium, Italy as whoever wins that game, I think will reach the final. I think Spain are good, but have some flaws, especially defensively. We've seen pop up in recent games. Andy, is there anybody else that you really think Denmark can get to the final? I mean, technically they're good, right? The way they're playing, they have momentum.
Denmark going to the semifinal, period, under any circumstances, is an awesome story at a major tournament, right? Yeah. Denmark going to the semifinals of a major tournament after what happened 43 minutes into their first game is something that you probably make a movie about one day. It is that kind of a story and an accomplishment from those players. I think a little bit of the credit that is due to some of those Danish players is probably getting lost in the Christian Eriksen storyline and the narrative. And just by going back to that again and again and saying, well, they're doing it for Christian Eriksen. They're doing it for Christian Eriksen. It's a really, really good team of a lot of players that plays for some really big clubs around Europe, and a lot of players that are going to play for even bigger clubs in Europe when the new season starts, I think, after what they've done at this tournament. So they're a very, very talented team. I don't think they get to the final, though. I look at England and I see that entire side of the bracket. It just belongs to them. The fact that they only have to go to Rome and they're right back to Wembley to get to the final. The only question I have about England, and I won't spend a lot of time on it, I just don't know if they're ever going to get anything out of Kane at center forward. I know he scored against Germany. It was a late goal. It was masterfully set up by basically everybody else in the team. But when he's playing up there by himself up top and against two slow center backs like Germany had, and he's just not touching the ball, he's just not able to outrun two of the slowest center backs in the world to get in behind, I get a little bit worried because they don't have the personnel on the wings that can make those runs in behind to score goals the way that he had at Tottenham when he was so successful this season. He's not dropping in his...
They just don't play them.
Well, but that's the same thing, isn't it? Because if they're not playing them, then they don't have them. If they're not on the field,
Right.
it doesn't matter. So the tactics are not set up to maximize Kane, I guess, is the point that I'm making. And so I just worry that at some point in this tournament that, if they find themselves 0-0 89 minutes in and they need something, are they going to actually be able to count on Kane for that? I don't know the way that they're set up that it's going to work for him.
I don't know, though. I feel like he's an easy target. I feel like he, as soon as he doesn't score a few goals in a few games running, it's, oh, Kane's sluggish. He doesn't look fit. And I've watched him closely. He's still making the same kind of runs. He still looks, the same effort-wise, and he's leading the line. You're right, though. It's different because he has a lot of defenders around. A lot of the teams playing against England aren't gun-ho. They're sitting back. They're trying to hit England on the counter. And it's difficult for him. But I think Raheem Sterling's obviously taking the headlines, and that's what's led England to this point. But when I do look at other nations, I just struggle to see past Belgium, if I'm honest. And that's my next question for you guys. Who do you want the final to be, and who do you think it will be? Nick, I mean, that's two great questions there. What are you looking for and hoping for the final? Predict what's going to happen.
I'd like to see Belgium versus England, if only for some of the Premier League storylines. I think that's what we're going. I think that's what we're going to see. I kind of want to see that as well, but I'm actually going to swap it out for Spain versus England. And the reason I want to see that is because I think Spain is setting up as a team that may be a World Cup threat. And I'd like to see them get that tournament experience to really threaten that. Players like Rodri, Thiago, Koke, their whole midfield comes out of a very organized super teams. And I think they might be built to just kind of sneaky win this, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's true. Andy, do you see Spain or, Switzerland, Italy, one of those teams winning it on that side of the bracket?
Yeah, I think what it will be and what I want it to be is the same thing. I think it's Italy, England, and it works, right? Maybe that'll be the hashtag for the game. But I think it's those two in the final, and I think it's gonna be hilarious, by the way, leading up to it, because England are now the kind of defensive team and Italy are the team that want to kind of get after you a little bit. And so the roles just means something about that to me is just so perfect and poetic that we need to see that in a final for European, champion status on the line.
Yeah, that would be pretty incredible. I picked Belgium, England as the final, believe it or not, when I made my predictions ahead of the round of 16 starting, and I had Belgium beating England in the final, which I could definitely see happening, to be honest, when the finals at Wembley and at home for England and everyone's getting way too excited. But there's so many different permutations. I think when you look at this, the quarterfinals, Belgium, Italy, Switzerland, Spain, Ukraine, England, Czech Republic, Denmark, so much could happen. But the favourites undeniably are Belgium and England on either side of the bracket. And then you'd probably look at Denmark and probably Spain as the next two teams that you'd say could have a good run to the final there. And obviously Italy as well. They get past Belgium, and I think they're in a really good position to get to the final. But over on Pro Soccer Talk at NBCSports.com, we'll keep you updated with the rest of Euro 2020. Who's actually going to win it? Who are the favourites? The latest news and analysis. We'll be chopping and changing our minds, I'm sure, after the quarterfinals, gents, because, Andy's fully on. He's got his waistcoat ready for the Gareth Southgate appreciation evening we're going to have. And yeah, England and Belgium look very, very good, and they are the favourites on either side of the bracket heading into the quarterfinal round. Okay, let's switch gears a little bit on pro soccer talk this week. Let's look at the Premier League. There's a lot going on transfer news-wise, managerially, a few changes. I mean, Andy, I can see you nodding your head in appreciation already. That Patrick Vieira to Crystal Palace is close to being confirmed at the time of recording. Rafael Benitez to Everton, the former Liverpool manager, going to Goodison Park. Don't think many of us saw that happening, but kind of makes sense in many ways. And then nobody to Tottenham Hotspur, it seems. I think all three of us have put on our application for Spurs, and we're all waiting by the phone because everyone else has been turned down or turned that job down. Andy, start with you on that. What do you think about Tottenham and those reports about Vieira to Palace and Benitez to Everton?
Yeah, how amazing is it that it just never stops in the Premier League? It just never, ever, ever stops. The transfers, the managers, everything. We've got this tournament going on, and the entire world, or much of the world is focused on that. And then there's just stuff happening behind the scenes every single day. The Tottenham situation is, I mean, pick a word. Pick a word that describes
keep it clean.
Yeah, just anything that describes a bad situation where nobody seems to be in charge. Nobody has any idea what's going on. Nobody is making smart and sound decisions, and everybody seems to be out to kind of get their own, really, in that situation. Or Daniel Levy's trying to kind of claw back some of the the respect that he had earned over years and years based on what's happened the last couple of years at the club and with the European Super League. And you've got a new director of football coming in who's technically not started the job yet, and he's been through 3 candidates for the managerial position already. And it's just, I don't know. I genuinely don't know. I couldn't tell you now at this point. I thought I had an idea 6 different times this summer who would end up being the manager. At this point, they've all been through. They've all been passed over or passed on the job. I don't know. I don't know who it's going to be.
So we're looking at like Antonio Conte has said no thank you. Nuno Espirito Santo has said no thank you. There's a lot of managers who've been linked. Brendan Rodgers doesn't want the job either. As a Tottenham fan, I heard the words used over here by a few Spurs fans. They said it's embarrassing that they don't have a manager, and it's been since April now that Mourinho was fired, and they don't have a new manager in charge. What do you think's happening there? Do you think that it's managers maybe now in a strong position that they don't want to put themselves in a bad job and lose, the reputation and not have any money to spend because they don't know what's going to happen with Harry Kane? What players are going to be there? What's the budget? Is that just what's happening here? Managers are waiting to see how it all unfolds this summer?
It's not embarrassing that they don't have a manager. It's embarrassing that they are a club of the stature that they are and nobody wants to be their manager. Like, that should be a job that any manager in the world should look at, and outside of the select, 10 or 12 that have the elite jobs, and should say, well, that's the highest job that I could get if I want to get into one of those elite jobs. And there's a proven record of going from that job into bigger jobs, and just nobody wants it. I do think it's a mixture of Harry Kane. I think it's a matter of money probably not available for the rest of the squad. I think it's a matter of there's a ton of work that needs to be done to the squad in a very short period of time. Otherwise, they're going to fall off big time in the Premier League and probably not even qualify for Europe. And I also think that just the uncertainty of who's really in charge at the club right now. And I follow the club very closely. I don't know who's calling the shots on what at this point. And I think that if you look at, think about a job for yourself. If you go into a new job, you want to know who you're working for. You want to know all about them. You want to know what they're like, what they demand and everything. And if you go into that interview and you don't know who's really hiring you, who you're really answering to once you're in, I honestly wouldn't want the job either.
And a lot of managers, Nick, we touched it there, seem to be in a situation where they're fine with not taking a job right now because they know that money's going to be tight from a transfer spend perspective. They know that maybe it's better to wait it out for another 12 months and let their reputation rise, because Everton, Palace, Tottenham, it's taken them a heck of a long time to find new managers. A lot of them have been turning jobs down. I want to switch to Everton and Rafael Benitez coming in. Obviously, you're a Newcastle fan. You've watched Benitez lead Newcastle to, I would say, good success over many years. What do you think about that move in particular? Do you think he's the right man to lead Everton to become, top 6 hopefuls, top 4 hopefuls even, or do you think that's a bit outlandish?
Well, the one thing he does as well as anyone is engage with history there. which is interesting because he comes from Liverpool, but he's lived there for a long time. He courted Newcastle fans in a masterful way and got them on board with him, and that saved him down the line. My only question about him is I think he's a very good and pragmatic coach. So what's he going to do with Richarlison? What's he going to do with these players who, Luca Digne is a perfect example of a guy who's going to thrive under him, right? Calvert-Lewin will do well under him, but what about these other guys? Is it, Allen is a good fit. Are all these pieces there? We'll be watching a little bit of a more boring Everton than we've seen in some time. And would Everton fans take that if it meant fifth place? And I think they would. I think they would. And the alternatives out there right now, I think, are wild cards, right? When you brought up Tottenham earlier, I was thinking, I wonder what Shevchenko is thinking now after seeing his star rise, right? So you're right. I looked down that list of available managers, and it's just not much in terms of really guys who would come in and do a job for a club of that size that has expectations of that size. But everybody who's paying attention knows the expectations are down here.
Yeah, it's true. You got some good young managers, but Graham Potter, I don't really see him leaving Brighton, even though a lot of clubs would want him. I think he's maybe going to stay there for another season. You have guys like Eddie Howe out of work, who's kind of just circling, maybe waiting for that big job. Steve Cooper at Swansea's done a really good job the last few years, and his name's been mentioned to a few teams. But yeah, Frank Lampard obviously is around and available as well. Scott Parker, obviously going to Bournemouth from Fulham. So yeah, I mean, there's some good young managers, but you're right. There's a real lack of quality candidates for a lot of these jobs. But Patrick Vieira is an interesting one. Crystal Palace, they've been steady. I mean, look at some of the past managers. Obviously, Roy Hodgson just left. They've had, Alan Pardew before that. They've had Tony Pulis, Sam Allardyce. They have been steady after the Frank de Boer debacle, just keeping it very, very simple and being mid-table. But if they do bring in Patrick Vieira, that would be quite a change, I think, in philosophy and the kind of players they could bring in and just playing stuff. And we all like what he did, I think, at Nice and at New York City FC, and we watched him closely at MLS. And I have to admit, he was my favorite player growing up. So I lived not close to Arsenal in England, and my dad would drive me to Highbury just to go and watch Patrick Vieira whenever I could, because he was my favorite player. And I've had the chance to meet him and interview him when he was at New York City, and a wonderful guy. But you think about the work he did at Man City as a youth team coach before he went to New York City. He's got a clear philosophy and playing style. And Andy, it feels like it could kind of work, right? For both parties. Like Palace, it's a bit of a risk. But for Vieira, he'll probably want to take that gamble to get back in the game and get a Premier League job. For Palace, it's kind of a bit of both. He knows the Premier League well. He's working here as a pundit during Euro 2020 on British TV, so he's in the circles. Do you think that could actually work, or do you think it's too much of a gamble for Palace with all of the players they have, not on the books anymore? They have a lot of flux there in terms of the actual players they have at Selhurst Park this summer.
Yeah, I think it might just be crazy enough that it could actually work in the end, because he's essentially, he might be one of the few examples of a manager. We just talked about all these managers who are not desperate for a job. They're fine without a job. They can wait. I don't know that he can wait. He doesn't have a ton of experience in the managerial game. And so when a job comes available and they're interested in him, even if it's at a time where there's not a lot of money available, even if it's a club like Palace, who I would honestly rate that job of the 20 Premier League clubs, probably the 20th best at the moment, just in terms of where the squad is at, the average age of the squad, what you have to work with going in on day one. Now, if he goes in with assurances, you're getting 2 full seasons, no matter what, then I would be a lot more comfortable if I were him. But I think he's kind of at a point where he just has to take almost whatever anybody is willing to give him at this point. And I do think he's a good manager. I liked what he did at New York City. He was very, very hands-on and managed tactically very closely from game to game, and it stuck out in MLS, where that doesn't always happen. So I think he's a good manager. It's a big step up. It's a really, really big step up when you're Palace, you're one of the 5 or 6 smaller teams in the Premier League, and suddenly you've got every single week almost you're playing against somebody bigger, somebody with more money, somebody that's expected to beat you. It's a different mentality, but if he can pull it off, then I think this could be a huge stepping stone for him to go to a really, really big job.
Okay, so that's the manager's sorted. Players, there haven't been too many moves yet in the transfer market. We're looking at Buendia to Aston Villa, which was a big transfer. Canate to Liverpool, which was a big one. Not many others, Nick. I mean, Kane and Grealish, they're probably waiting until after the Euros, but Man City is circling for those players. Jadon Sancho to Man United. Ben White to Arsenal looks like a really interesting one. Any other moves or any of those ones that really catch your eye and think that could be game-changing for that team?
I've just been interested to see what the Man City fallout is going to be. Meaning, are they going to, if they're going to spend 9 figures on Grealish or Kane, where do the dominoes fall? There's been talk about Laporte being a perfect fit for Barcelona. There's been talk about Sterling, potentially as a make weight in a deal for Kane, right? So it's just very, not that I think that makes sense, but again, if I'm Daniel Levy and I'm thinking, ooh, an English international star to take the shine off of, or the dirt off of losing it. So I'd be really interested to see what happens there. I do think Liverpool is probably going to take a couple of big swings here too, whether it's in the midfield. Kanate is a huge signing for them, and I expect them maybe to make the biggest deal, but Sancho's happening, and I think it'll be the deal of the summer.
Absolutely. There'll be a lot of transfer news, a lot of managerial merry-go-round still to happen, gents, over the summer months. The Premier League, as Andy said at the start, it's just in the background doing lots of things when there's the Euros, Copa America, Gold Cup coming up. So many tournaments over the summer, but the Premier League never sleeps. We know that. The fixtures are out for next season, and managers will very soon, we'll be seeing them putting teams through their paces in pre-season, which I can't quite believe I'm saying, but we are not far away from early August when this new season is going to start. And at Pro Soccer Talk on NBCSports.com, we'll keep you updated with all the latest transfer news and comings and goings around the Premier League. So, gents, that does this for Pro Soccer Talk this week. Thanks so much for joining me. Obviously, Euro 2020 has been front and center, but it's great, as always, to speak all things soccer with you two. And I look forward to doing that again very soon. So thanks, everyone, for watching. Gents, have a great week, and I'll speak to you both very soon. Cheers.